Hello everybody, this is thejonnymar and welcome to my latest walkthrough project. And for this particular project I'm going to be playing, as you can see, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link for the NES. So I figured since I've already done the other three Zelda games that I enjoy on my channel, which are the NES original, A Link to the Past, as well as Link's Awakening, I would go on and take on one of these Zelda games that I'm not a huge fan of, although I do enjoy it for what it is and what it tried to do within the particular series, and that is Zelda 2. So my goals for this particular series are threefold. I want to show a route through the game that is the best, in my opinion, for casual players trying to learn how to play this game. I want to talk about a lot of the differences between this particular version as well as the Japanese version of the game, as we're going to head out on Link's most adventuresome quest. And I also want to show off pretty much everything the game has to offer. So hidden items, secrets, Easter eggs, those sorts of things. So this game, like many second games and sequels on the NES, that are notable, is actually significantly different than the original. And other games that come to mind are Mario Bros. 2 and Castlevania 2. And this game tried to do things quite a bit differently compared to the first Zelda game, in that it changed a lot of the combat. So one of the big changes here in the graphics is that Link is actually side-scrolling. You may notice Zelda here is asleep as part of the story. One of the differences between the US as well as the Japanese version is that the US version has more of these columns here, and then the torches that were next to Zelda are not in the Japanese version. You'll notice we also have lives, and so if we die 3 times, we actually get a game over screen and have to start all over, although we keep our experience because this game actually has experience. Thank Dragon Warrior for bringing that to all of the different games that came out around this time. But you'll notice we got some enemies there on the overworld screen. They're actually different in the Japanese version, as shown in this particular picture. So in the US version, they're actually little black blobs that look a little different based on the difficulty of the encounter. And there's a forest up there that we'll be coming back to. But in the Japanese version, they're all similar shaped blobs, but they're colored differently based on their difficulty. And we can't go through that boulder yet, but we will be able to in the future with an additional item that we're going to pick up. So we're going to head into our first town here, and the towns are actually named after, in some way, you can think of it that way, the sages in some of the later games in the series, although you can also think of it as those sages were named after these towns. So our goal is to return 6 crystals to different palaces across the world, get the Triforce back, and that will allow us to wake up Zelda. And always remember, if all else fails, use fire. Now we're not going to get a fire spell for quite a while. But one of the big differences in this game, of course, is the combat. Now there are people in town that will heal you if you talk to them and go into the house with them. I'm not exactly sure what she's doing inside that house to heal us. We're going to go with giving us a nice potion or a massage. Certainly not a puff variety. And only the hammer can destroy the roadblocks, which we're not going to be getting for quite a while. Now, there's not a lot going on in this first town. There is one important person to talk to, and that is not this lady here, although she will let us know that there is a heart in southern Parapa. But it's actually the woman with the bowl on her head. And so in each of the towns in the world, there is a wise man. And in the first town, you just have to go in and talk to him. In the other towns, you're actually going to have to do some sort of a side quest for the person outside that will allow you to actually talk to the wise man and get a magic spell. So you will learn from each wise man. And again, one of the differences between the Japanese version and US version is that in the US version, or international version, they actually animated the wise men. So they move around a little bit with their beard and fingers. And they also changed the sound effect when the wise man gives you the spell. But we have our first spell here, which is Shield, which cuts damage done by enemies in half. Now, you only can use it on one particular screen. Once you use the spell and then scroll the screen, the spell will actually wear off and you'll have to recast it. and it will use up about half of our magic, a little bit more than half currently. We're going to be getting a magic power-up that will essentially get it to about half of our magic, so we'll be able to cast it twice. And this little kid lets us know that there's a candle, which is the special item, in the first palace we're going to be heading to, which is Parapa Palace. But getting back to the combat, again, one of the big differences for this game and really any other game in the series, which all went with more of that traditional top-down, action-oriented combat, is that this version has the side-scrolling variety. And so we're going to have basically two different attacks at the start here. We're going to be able to jump, and then we're also going to be able to use our sword, and we have a sword beam. And then as we kill enemies, we get experience points. As you get experience points, you can level up different attributes, attack, magic, or life. Now I'm going to be saving up my experience because I want to prioritize attack. It is the most important stat to me. Now you can level up as you want. I'm going to tell you my suggested ways of leveling in this particular game. We're going to kill some of these bots here, as they're called, I believe. But in general, if you are first starting this game off, you might want to prioritize health, as you're going to be probably taking a lot of hits. We're going to head into a little cave here in the southern part to the south of the starting castle. You'll notice it's very dark in here, but you might be able to notice the little feet walking of these enemies. So I like to go to the town first to get the shield spell, so that if you are hit by these enemies, you don't take a ton of damage. And then there's 3 of them hanging out in these little holes here. And so if you duck down and slash, you will get them once they jump up and shoot little rocks at you. But we get our first magic power-up. So you'll actually be able to find heart containers, as well as magic power-ups that will increase the size of your bar, basically give you more HP and MP. And then you also will get levels, which will essentially give you more within each of those bars that you can actually have. And then your spells will actually take less magic to cast. Here's the second town, the town of Rudo. We're going to talk to some more people in here, and this town actually has one of the more infamous characters in the game. So again, another person that will heal you if you need your life healed, and then there's actually a person in this town that will also heal your magic. And that woman notes Death Mountain, which makes an appearance in this game as well, and it is actually one of the hardest areas of the game, especially for a player starting to learn how to play. But the combat is the thing that really takes time to sort of get used to, learning how to maneuver Link. And one of the differences between the Japanese and US version is that Link actually has a mouth in this version. He does not on his sprite in the Japanese version. But here's Error. That is his actual name. That is not an error. We'll be coming back and talking to him again a little bit later, because he has a friend who will reference Error. But you're going to have to get used to Link's kind of quirks associated with his movement. He moves a little bit of a slippery way. Kind of feels like he's on ice sometimes. He ends up moving to the left and right a little bit quicker and maybe continues in those directions a little bit longer than you might expect. And so you're going to have to get used to his movement to the left and to the right. Here's another difference between the first and second games in the series, is that keys do have to be used in the dungeons that you find them. If you remember in the original Zelda, you could use keys in any dungeon. That woman noted not to go south, and I will show you why in a second. Because we do not have the candle yet. Remember, we have to go to Parapa Palace in order to find it. And if you want to continue in the game after we finish the first palace, it is all dark. Now, some speedrunners will go through there after getting the jump spell, and basically, it's not fun. And so you really don't want to be doing it, especially if you're playing this game for the first time. But the second thing you want to get used to, in addition to Link's movement, you may notice there's a cave up there. We'll be coming back to it because it's dark. But it'll come into play a little bit later after we finish the first palace, is Link's stabbing animation and kind of how to go about doing that. The fact that Link can stab high or low, left or right, and then as the game progresses, you'll actually get additional abilities to be able to stab up and down, with the down stab being noted as one of the most powerful abilities in the game. We have one enemy here in this dark cave, not too bad to deal with, and we're going to head through to the desert on the other side. Now before heading to the first palace, we're actually going to head to the south. But we're going to have to take on an enemy encounter here, which is rather obnoxious. We're going to skip the level up here, because again I want to attack. We're going to try to block these fireballs, but they can get tricky, because you have to block the low ones low and the high ones high, or else you're going to take some damage. And you also need to slash these worms multiple times to get them out of the way. But we want to head all the way down to the south here, because there is a health upgrade, a heart piece, or heart container actually, that we want to pick up. Now this area is incredibly annoying, especially if you're learning the game for the first time. We have to platform across these particular areas. If you fall in the pit, you will die and lose a life. And you have those bubbles coming up, which are pretty good at knocking you down and making you lose a life. So now we have a Goriah here. We're going to kill it. I don't know the names of all the enemies. I think that's a Goriah. We're going to pick up the heart container here to increase our life meter. But it throws boomerangs at you that you have to block either high or low again. Again, I'm not going to necessarily be referring to all of the enemies by their names because I don't know all the names. And I'm sure someone, a viewer, will note in the comments section what all the enemies are called. And I do find that most people get very offended for some reason when I mispronounce, in their opinion, what different characters are called. So I will refrain from doing that to try to keep the angst to a minimum in this particular playthrough. But here's our first dungeon. So this is Parapa Palace. So I'm going to save before we head in. So I'm playing the Nintendo Switch Online version, which allows me to save basically at any time. I'm not going to be abusing that, really. I'll basically be saving at about the halfway point of each episode before taking on each dungeon, and then I'll save once the dungeon is over. Now these knife-wielding, running enemies I just killed there are annoying because they actually will take away experience if you get hit by them. Bots are, in my opinion, the most annoying enemy in the game, or at least one of the top two, along with one other particular enemy we'll talk about a little bit later. We have to come all the way to the left here to get a key. To pick up the key, you actually do have to slash it. And then we have to take on this skeleton, perhaps a Stalfos. And the easy way to kill them is to basically stab low, because they cannot duck. Now there are other enemies in the game that are similar to them that can duck and actually block your low blows. And we're going to talk about ways of actually exploiting that and getting around their attack pattern. I'm sure those of you that know this game and know of Iron Knuckles, you know what I'm talking about. But some other changes between this version and the Japanese version is the elevators. They move significantly faster in this particular version compared to the Japanese version. And something I didn't mention while we were out on the world map is that the Japanese version actually has water effects. And so that is not in the US version, or international version as it's called. So we're very close to getting a level up here for our attack. We're going to skip this elevator, and we'll be coming back to it. I want to get a few more keys. There we go, we have our 200 experience points, so we're going to level up our attack. So again, this is a huge difference between the international version or US version and also the Japanese version, is the leveling. So in the US version, we're going to take on this bubble here, or perhaps an anti-fairy. These things take a ton of hits to kill. You have to stun it and slash it a lot of times. Even at level 2 here with our attack, it's going to take probably like 50 hits or so. And it does give you 50 experience, and they do respawn, so if you're trying to grind, they can be good for doing that. But basically in the US version, with the leveling system, you have predefined sets of experience that you need to get level ups on your particular attributes. Attack is prioritized as the highest in terms of needing the most experience. I think health is the lowest and the magic is in between. And then as you get higher levels of them, this fairy will restore you one time in the dungeon, all of your hearts. So we're going to skip that. We'll come back to it if we need it. But basically you'll need more and more experience to get level ups of particular stats as you get higher stats in those particular attributes. Let's duck and grab this item here. Now in the Japanese version, it's a little bit different. Basically, there is no predefined set amount on each stat that's different. There's just a set amount at each particular level up. And so you can level up, for example, attack very easily and for very low amounts of experience early on, and for example, prioritize attack to level it all the way up to the max level, which is 8. But then what's going to happen is that each subsequent level up after that for your other stats is going to get higher and higher. And so it's going to become much harder to level up, for example, life and magic at that point. Now, since attack is a priority, and it's something that you will need very high levels to do well in this game, especially in the late game, it is prioritized, for example, by speedrunners. And so they will level up attack almost exclusively if they're playing the Japanese version, all the way to 8, the max level, and then just try to avoid getting hit or using up their magic, and then level up their other stats as needed. Oh, we need to dodge this guy. But in the US version, I find more of a kind of even approach tends to work best. I do tend to prioritize attack, so my attack will generally be higher than my health or my magic. And you might find for you, if you're taking a lot of hits, you might want to prioritize life, for example. But at the end of this first dungeon, I want particular stats, and I want my attributes at particular stats. Ow, this is going to be trouble. I'm going to take a couple hits here. And this room is incredibly dangerous. These bots are really annoying. That is a magic restoring potion. We're going to wait for this bot to come back here. I am being overly cautious because I don't want to take the damage. You can just blitz through if you want and jump past it and take a hit. But again, I don't want to take that damage. This area is going to collapse as you run across it, and there's actually an experience bag about halfway through. And so what you can do is either stop right on the experience bag, duck and slash it, or you can do what I did, which is do a jump slash, which allows you to keep sort of in motion while you're doing it. And it will respawn if you miss it and it falls into the lava. But again, if you fall into the lava, you will die. Now we're going to use our shield spell because we have 2 of the harder enemies in this particular dungeon. First we have this almost Hammer Brother-like character, this goblin, throwing fireballs, some people say. I always see it as mallets or maces. And so we're just gonna let him jump around like a fool. We'll get our magic restored here, and then we will progress on to one of the more difficult enemies in the game, which is an Iron Knuckle. So you'll notice he moves his shield up and down. The way to exploit this particular character is to do a jump slash. So jump, and as you're just starting to come down from the peak of your jump, slash with the attack button, and you will hit the Iron Knuckle in their head, above their shield, and bypass their annoying little pattern that they'll do there, where they will basically block all of your attacks. Or if you're a masochist, you can try to attack them normally by attacking high and low while standing next to them. Some people do that. I never enjoy doing that. I just use the jump slash. And especially with later versions of the Iron Knuckle, different variants of it, you're going to have to use that jump attack, in my opinion, to get past them. But again, another difference between this version and the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, to pick up everything in the game, whether keys or heart pieces or anything, you have to slash it with your sword. In this version, they changed it, so certain items you actually just pick up by walking over them. Let's let this bubble go by. And it'll actually scroll off the screen and disappear. And we are actually almost done with this dungeon. So my goal for Dungeon 1, Parapa Palace, is to have my stats at 4 attack, 2 magic, and 2 health. So to do that, we're actually going to heal here with the fairy. We're actually not going to finish the dungeon the first time through. We're going to kill everything, but then we're actually going to skip the crystal at the end in the statue, which is ultimately what you're trying to do in each of the different dungeons. As we take out another Iron Knuckle here, and then a few more skeletons as well. But if you jump over the activation point underneath the place where the crystal goes into the statue, you can actually go out of the palace and come back into it and refight all the enemies, which is a great way to level up. So my recommendation for people watching this is to get your stats to 4 attack, 3 health, and 3 magic at the end of Palace 1. That'll tend to get you ready and able to survive going into Palace 2. Now I'm going to stop at 422 because that's good enough for me going forward. But again, my recommended is 433 because we're going to take on the first boss here. So I'll end up coming back through the dungeon a couple of times. I'll do that off screen and I'll just cut to when I finish, and then we'll put the crystal in after we take on the first boss here, Horsehead. So you want to do a jump slash at his head, as you might expect, and dodge backwards to avoid his massive mace. And you have to stab him depending on what your attack level is. We almost got to attack level 3. You notice we're a little bit short. I got bad with my random drops. Sometimes some enemies will drop experience bags, or P bags as they're called. And we didn't get any, we only got magic restoration potions. So we ended up short of getting that 3rd level of attack, so it took a little bit longer to kill him than normal. But now again, I'm going to jump over the activation point of this statue, go through the dungeon a few times to kill enemies to get my stats up a little bit more, and I will meet you back here once I get up to 322. So I will see you in a little bit once I'm able to do that. Alright, so let's put the crystal in. It will automatically give you enough experience to finish off your current level, whatever it is. In my next episode, we will head towards dungeon number 2. So eyes viewers, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for the continued support, and I'll see y'all next time. So long! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please press like and leave a comment below. Please also subscribe to my channel and press the notification bell. See you next time!